Hello, my friends. Welcome into yet another episode. In today's segment, I am joined by Nate Kap, my good friend and very talented artist and presenter, to get into the topic of green language, or the language of the birds. A very deep and profound esoteric perspective into the words that we use every single day and may have never given a second look to. As a side note, if you are listening in on the podcast side of the platform, this segment is going to be a visual heavy presentation with slides. So I do recommend either watching the video format on, say, Spotify, or jumping over to the YouTube channel. So I'm very excited about this one. I think you're gonna love it. Stay tuned, and that's coming up next. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Wizard Factory podcast, where together we explore the universe through ourselves. My name is Logan Hart. If you're new to the channel, this channel is all about giving you the spiritual tools and mindsets to live a more free and empowered life. If that sounds good to you, subscribe down below, click the bell so you never miss a video. Today I'm joined by my friend and fellow truth speaker, Nate Kap. Nate is a podcaster, content creator, public presenter, and all-around awesome guy. So glad to have him and honored to have you here on the show, Nate. We're going to be talking about green language and etymology and symbolism. Very excited for this one. So, Nate, welcome to the show, man. Glad to have
Thanks,
you here.
thanks, Logan. Yeah, man. I'm really stoked to be on the Wizard Factory finally, and it's a pleasure. It's an honor, and I really love what you're doing with your show. And it's been a true inspiration, to say the least. And so I'm stoked to get into these topics because green language and symbolism, the language of the birds. I definitely want to talk about that too. They're very not well known, and so hopefully we can really dive into this and get to the goods of it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get into this because we've never done any episodes or any content specifically about this topic. We've touched on, obviously, lots of times getting into the etymology of words, the breakdown of where words and syllables come from and how they can be formed together, looking at each individual piece to kind of extrapolate this hidden meaning objectively, which is very fascinating. But I'm excited to give this topic a full attention for an episode here. And before we get into your background, just want to say, like, this area has been a huge aspect of my awakening. When I first started kind of diving deeper beyond quote unquote conspiracy stuff and kind of dipping more into the occult aspects of things. Many of the viewers know, as many of you have been through on your similar journey, when you first start looking into this stuff and you hear about these dark occultists, Illuminati and stuff, you kind of just assume that it's all dark, that it's all inherently evil, and that's just simply not the case, which we've covered in great depth on this show. But when I was going through that process myself, and specifically when I started really diving into the word of Jordan Maxwell, I mean, it just set off a bomb in my brain. I was almost obsessed with just looking at every single word. I had a notepad with me at all times. I was writing down words and circling different syllables, or putting two words together and saying how they have a similar root, like spirit and spiral, like that, for just one example there. So I mean, there really is such a depth and profound practicality to this when you are, because words, we're using language every single day. Not only do we use it to communicate with each other, but it in a way, on a psychological level, words are the construct of our very worldview. I mean, if you've studied like the work of Terence McKenna, he talks about this. Language is literally like the construct of our mind and the way we see the world. So it's no surprise that the social engineers, the builders of society, so to speak, have really obfuscated words. They've built in mental tricks and traps without having to spell it out for you. Literally, it's just in the kind of base assumptions with how we use certain words and the context that they're used in, and this sort of thing. So that's my little prerequisite talk on where I'm coming from with this. But Nate, I'd love to hear first a little bit about your general background from your spiritual journey, how you were raised up, and then what got you interested in topics such as this, and then specifically the language aspect.
Yeah, it's been an insane journey, to say the least, because looking back and thinking where I was as a little hoodlum, I was extremely blank. I had really no understanding of anything. And I always, anytime somebody asks me this question, I always resort back to my very first, awakening, which was when I was on the stairs, waiting for Santa Claus to come through the door. And of course, seeing my parents, that really just like destroyed my fantasy of believing in Santa Claus. So from that point, I always was a little skeptical of how things have been run. And, as I got older, I was raised Catholic, and I kind of broke out of that, asking questions and kind of becoming atheistic a little bit in my teens, and then realizing like that wasn't a very good solution. And I started to, get into the works of Eckhart Tolle. And then I really started to realize how, egotistical I was, or not living in the present moment. And then that led me to, a friend of mine got me into Zeitgeist. That was, that's most people's like big awakening. And that really, seeing astrotheology for the first time really blew my mind. And then, I got into, Alex, and then Alex Jones. And then I got in, and then once, I was like stuck in a very negative mindset, and I started to branch out into more positive researchers like Alan Watts, and both Alan Watts, the one who just passed, and the other one that passed away back in the I think it was the 80s. Then eventually I got Douglas Martin, right?
Yes.
I got him into Zeitgeist, and he was very resistant. And then he
Is he your uncle?
he's my stepfather. I got him into that. He was very resistant, and then he woke up from that after he gave it a chance. He was one of the people that was like really like pushing me away when I was trying to show him this documentary. But Doug, he really woke up after that. He went on a crazy journey, and then he turned me on to Passio, and then my whole life freaking changed in an instant. Oh, and the other thing was while I was getting into Passio, I was also becoming a really I guess famous in the in the small world of caricature, because I'm a caricature artist. I was becoming pretty popular in that community. Right around when I got into Passio's work, I was really getting popularity, and I came out with 2 caricature art books. And I started to realize like places around the world were, because they had these crazy restrictions on artists. that were, making political art. People were being put in jail, people were silenced, people have had their have been tortured because
Yeah.
of the art. And I quickly realized, things are looking a little crazy around here too. I think I want to fight for the rights of artists to be able to express. That's one of the most beautiful things that we can do is express as artists. And while I was getting into Passia's work, I started to really realize, like, I'm not here to be a caricature artist. I'm here to find purpose and uh, awaken my spirit to realize, like, I'm not here to be enslaved. And so once I started to realize that, I branched out into all these other researchers, including, what Hugh, you were talking about, Jordan Maxwell and Terence McKenna and, David Whitehead, Tessarion, and just there's so many others. And luckily, when I was having my awakening, I was with Brandon and Doug, and both of these guys, we've kind of bounced. We call ourselves the three initiates, but we kind of, in a kind of a jokey way, but we have bounced ideas off of each other to help each other, through this awakening. And I'm very thankful for that. But, here we are on this video, chat, talking about in my opinion, some of the most advanced information in understanding how to basically communicate with nature. And, I understanding natural law has really brought me closer to this type of information that we're going to talk about today. So, I mean, there's a lot more to my story, but, essentially, I'm stoked that I've became as awake as I am, but it's also very painful because, now I'm sensitized to the world and seeing how it is. And I just want to say, man,
Resensitized.
yeah. And I just want to say that you and Will, earlier, I got a chance to see some of your show, and it was very, very well done, very well spoken. You guys are such an inspiration to me, and I'm so thankful that you guys are in this fight with me to go against this ignorance, this wall of ignorance. And I thought you guys really laid it down so well, and I really appreciated everything you said. So I wanted to give you props on that.
Yeah, man, that means the world to me. I really, and I really respect your work as well. I mean, I regard you as one of the most well-informed people in this community. Your podcast. I mean, it's so in depth. It's so dense, in a good way. Just chock full of information to take in. The kind that you really need to give it at least two listens to fully absorb it all. So I mean, I really appreciate that. So I'm glad that it's a mutual, feedback loop of inspiration. That's what it's all about, man. For me, we've both been doing this for a bit of time now, and I love that we're kind of starting to see a new era for these great workers, that there's a lot more collaboration. There's a lot more of us branching out and connecting and forming these bonds and doing roundtable discussions and coming on each other's shows. And I think it's really exciting to see how things are starting to unfold from where things were before, where everyone was a bit of an island and kind of, kept to themselves. And I do think Mark's platform, the One Great Work Network, has really helped just in that one aspect alone, of just giving this web tangibly to all these people, that gives like a more of a context of, hey, you're on the network too, why don't we make a video together. Incidentally, I've been meaning to reach out to you for quite some time as well, but just there's quite a few of us now as well. And as you know, and those watching, I took quite a hiatus from the channel, processing and dealing with things in my own life and the way things ended with the previous, Brian being on the show and everything like that. And I ultimately decided that, I'm going to continue doing it and just move forward and, let it be what it is. Let it be part of the story, right?
Yeah.
It's like a battle scar now, basically. So
Oh,
just
I know, man. That's one thing I really respect about how you put your shows together. You have a very great eye for aesthetics, and that's what I'm striving for. It's tough for me because I don't consider myself. I would assume you're very articulate with your left brain. You seem more of a left brain in that way. Even though you're creative, I just see like you're very you have like a nitpick, which I want to be more like, and I'm
it's
trying.
that
And
Virgo. I've got a lot of Virgo aspects in my chart, both from the Vedic and the Western, which I definitely, I mean, it's something you have to keep in balance, of course,
for sure,
but I definitely embrace as a gift, and I love my Virgo-ness. You know what I mean? Like some people can find it irritating or whatever, but I mean, I think like just the work speaks for itself. Like that's, it's the outcome, it's the product that you know is it's like that kind of Saturn energy almost, like putting so much pressure on attention to detail is going to refine down to that, that diamond at the end of it. So anyway, yeah,
absolutely.
I'm, happy to hear that, especially from an artist like yourself, to mention my eye, because I forgot to mention that in the introduction, but you're incredibly skilled and talented at what you
Appreciate it.
do with your art, man. So, and it's so cool to see how you've applied that to what you're doing, where you're aligned on your life path to become more focused on, not only art that is pleasing and enjoyable to look at, but also it stimulates consciousness. It depicts things that can spark a new idea or a new perspective without a single word being spoken. That's such a powerful form of magic. Is I mean, that's exactly what it is. So, you know,
Thank you. I really appreciate that, man. That means a lot. I use the talent that I have to, that's one of the reasons. Well, I didn't give up caricature. I still do it. I love the art of caricature, but I have incorporated it into a way to become some kind of awakening mechanism within people's subconscious. And, I can only hope that it does the same thing that it does for you, for, most people. But I think that an image definitely will help people come to a better understanding. That's why I really like to do, uh, you know, shows and presentations with a lot of slides, because I think the imagery really like zaps people in the in the subconscious, but in the heart, and they
yeah,
really start to see it. It does ignite their eye, whether they truly know that or not.
yeah, and uh, again, from our perspective, what I mean by that is the Wizard Factory. We are, the royal we, the collective we, are all about the pagan mindset, and what better way to depict that than through imagery? Because as I've explained, paganism isn't about a religion. It's not about a certain, practice or ritual or anything like that. What it really comes down to is being able to view nature, by nature I mean reality itself, all of it, through an allegorical lens. That's what the mythology is all about. And being able to see any given moment, any given situation as an allegory, and extrapolating wisdom from that, because that's literally what this place is here for. So it's the only proper and true spiritual mindset to adopt. If you don't have that, you're not getting everything that you can get out of this experience. And that's a really great
Completely agree.
segue. What's that?
I completely agree.
That's a great segue into our topic here today, because, you know, taking down to the fundamental level, what are words but symbols and images, right? Think about
Yeah.
how it began as, drawings, hieroglyphs, right? Before they
Right.
became these more refined lines and dots and crosses and things like that, they were actual pictographs. So it's using a picture to convey an idea, a message. This is, fundamentally what we're talking about. So that's a great tie-in to getting into looking at uh, words as more than just a vehicle for, well, like a literal translation of this means that, but even looking at each individual word as or letter, sorry, as a sigil, a
Yeah.
letter of energy. That's, think about it. It's a letter. It's letting energy come through,
Yeah.
and yeah, it wields a great
Let
power.
her, let the sacred feminine, because
Right.
it's
So
it's a
Sophia.
the unseen, because words are not seen. When we speak words, they're the unseen.
Right.
Let her. That's
I love
cool.
it. Yeah, getting into it already.
That's what I was hoping for.
Yeah, I
You
call
know,
it sword play. Sword play,
so
because it's
word
like,
play.
yeah,
Yep.
sword play. Because yeah.
Sword play. Yeah, man. I like that. That's awesome.
So, Nate, you have some slides prepared. Do you want to cover any more like basic ideas first, or should we go ahead and get into that?
Yeah, we can go ahead and get into it. Yeah, let's go ahead and do it.
Sure.
So, one thing I want to state here before we get into this is that the slides that I'm going to be sharing, I might kind of go through slides quickly, or might kind of go off topic a little bit, because I didn't really exactly know how this whole layout was going to be. So I'm kind of going off the top just a little bit, but I do want to say that these slides are from the show number 55 of the Cubbyhole. And and there was a reason that I put these slides together and gave my I guess if you want to call it a presentation in that show. There was a reason that I gave it in that show in the order. So if this is something that interests anybody who's listening, I definitely recommend that you start at podcast number 1 and work your way forward, just because it is a tapestry. And if you really want to understand, I mean, you can go to show number 55 and you can listen to it. But as long as you go back and really take the time to go through the shows to really get why this show is in the order that it's in,
Context.
because context, it'll really make so much more sense. And on this show, this is all about refinement. So I'm going to talk about things I didn't talk about on that show, and so one of the things that I also want to state before we get into this language is what this language is not. This language both of these languages, green language and the language of the birds, are occult languages. And obviously anybody who watches your show knows that occult does not mean evil, and it doesn't mean good. It just means hidden. So, and you'll understand why these are hidden languages. But language of the birds, it is. Well, I'm going to get into that. But these languages are not just made up languages. There's a reason that we can tap into these languages now, just like we could hundreds of thousands of years ago. Okay, and Just to be really clear, green language has nothing to do with your breath being green. It has nothing to do with being able to communicate with birds. And I mean, if you do communicate with birds, that's pretty cool. I mean, it's pretty amazing, though, what we can learn from this language that really does connect us to the birds in a way that maybe we wouldn't think actually does. But both of these languages are nature languages. These are languages of nature. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean they're the only languages of nature, but they are languages of nature because they do reconnect us to source, to nature. They do help us. When you understand that we live in when you understand natural law and you understand the system of morality, then you will see how, because in mystery traditions such as Kabbalah or Freemasonry, we can really use much more effective. You'll really gain so much more out of them as you use them within those those systems. Okay, so one thing I want to talk about a little bit before I really get into the green language is symbolism. Okay, so the language of symbolism is similar, and this is kind of something you were already talking about earlier, which was really cool that you got into that. But symbolism, the language of symbolism and green language are very similar. Okay, so basically, you can pull from a symbol, you can pull from green language. You can both are about going beyond the threshold of what we commonly know in the vernacular, right? So it's about understanding how, when we bring knowledge to the information, being the information stored in the symbols, stored in the language of green. What we're doing is we're searching for what can't be found, typically. So it's an unveiling, right? And in the context of language or communication, a symbol can be looked at as a place or an image that stores memory of phonetic vibration, right, within the mind. So when we see a symbol is what holds the information of what we understand as the words that we use every day, right? So a symbol stores memory of sounds that are associated with letters, right? And letters are symbols. So we're using the language that we're using right now is English. And there's a structure to English. There's a structure of grammar, right? And grammar consists of, the words that are being used and the sounds of the words. But when you really look at it, the words are bundles of symbols, right? And so each symbol is a principle, right? And so we are using the principle to communicate with each other, because it's a foundation. Most people don't even know what principle is, but it's a foundation. It is that which is most important, right? And so we're using this to communicate with each other, right? And so we're using through phonetics. People don't even realize that they're using principles and symbols all the time. Right. So I think this is one of the best ways to actually teach people how symbols actually work and how principles work. Because without us, for instance, you and I having this conversation, if you don't understand English enough, and then you're not going to completely understand what I'm trying to get at. And that's because, obviously, if you are, which means that you understand that you have to understand a certain amount of the same language as me and the sounds associated with it, the phonetic sounds, how we spell out sounds. And that means we're sharing a principle together to communicate. And that's, that's the same whether we communicate with each other through this verbal conversation, or we communicate with, the elders of the ancient past or nature. It's a similar thing. It's very, and this is extremely important to understand this before understanding, green language and the language of the birds.
Yeah, the
Um,
words are like the bridge between two minds. The
right,
bridge has to be based on that common understanding to allow the transfer of those ideas, because ultimately the goal isn't the word in the words themselves. The words are simply a pointer, and it's supposed to activate the other person's mind with the same idea that you're holding in your mind. It's pure magic. I love it.
right, yeah. And as I move, I think anybody listening will really appreciate what I'm stating here by the time we get to, especially the language of the birds. Now, um, I'm going to go ahead and move into green language, and I'd like to start off. Um, let me just check and see what these slides are real quick, just so I have an understanding. Um, See, because I had a different idea what I was going to do, but just real quick, I want to state that for most people, when we are thinking of the thing that we all mostly all share in this day and age is a television or TV, right? This is something that we all can, yeah, exactly. We can all relate with our TV. And what is a TV? What is a television? Well, a television is a screen that projects vibrations, images to our mind. Flicker rates. Flicker rates are crazy these days, but the point is to recognize what is a television made for. Most people think it's for their enjoyment, their entertainment. But once you really start digging deep, we don't really have to dig that deep. You know that these televisions were manufactured specifically for as a propaganda machine to tell you what to believe.
Puts your
And
brain in specific wavelength states that are open
exactly.
to suggestibility.
Right. And so write in the word television, and a lot of people already know this, tell a vision or tell lie vision, tell a lie with a vision, right? And that's a very simple one. That's something a lot of people can relate to because they have a TV, they understand it. And, I think that is probably the easiest way to introduce green language and how it is it's because we have to understand that, and as we go through these slides and as I talk about this language more, we'll understand that it is a language about morality. It's a language about, what is moral and what's immoral, how this language is being used to unveil a moral message, a moral code, right? And so, well, one thing I also want to talk about, when it comes to, green language is that, well, let's look at this slide right here. Let's go to the slides because maybe it's okay. Yeah, this is great. This is exactly where I wanted to go anyway. So green language is it's codified by man and nature, right? It's there is principles about this language, and it's granted by the universe to those aligned in natural law, and that's because once you start really waking up to this language, or waking up to natural law, waking up to the fact of our harmful behavior and what it actually creates in our world, that means that you're starting to raise into a balanced frequency. And I'm going to get into that. Now, This language is about embracing humility and who, who opposes man's authority, because green language is not about man's authority. It's about transcending man's authority from our mind. It's about deprogramming man's authority and becoming sovereign, right? So this doesn't mean to oppose the rules of grammar and words and their definitions. That's not what this is about. So these people who are kind of say that green language is just like it's a language to you're just reaching for something, or you're recognizing patterns where there aren't any, which is just a form of apophenia. Green language is not apophenia. And there is apophenia. What is it?
It's important to have discernment here. There is such a thing as what you're talking about, where, and I've seen people do this, where they're extrapolating things that I'm just like, that doesn't make any sense. Or it's like confirmation bias. They're
Right.
grasping, they're reaching, just to try to prove a point. And it's like, but that's not really that productive. But what you're talking about is something different from that. There's almost a scientific aspect to it.
Absolutely, there is. And so the slide goes, rules of language must first be obeyed, as they are the principles that we use to be clear in our communication, but to not let the rules of grammar and definitions and pronunciation dictate or limit the investigation, your birthright, because you are the true investigator, you are the true detective. That is something we all have. And to not limit the words and their origins or their revealing phonetic interpretations. So this is about recognizing that if you're going to look into words and their phonetic revealings, what they phonetically sound like, it's totally your call. You do whatever you want. You can play with it as much as you want in the sense of wordplay or puns, whatever you want to do. But when you're starting to talk about truth, you better have a legitimate foundation in the grammar to really break down the word and its definition. It's not only it's the history of the definition, but also its inception, its etymology, and really be able to break the words or word down in a way that makes sense in a parallel type of way. Because the way green language is about solidifying what it's already saying. For instance, with going back to the television. Well, people can say, oh, well, that's just wordplay. It's like, no, it's actually telling you something true about what the thing actually does, the TV actually does, So grammar is so important. Stay true to the grammar. Stay true to being, humble when you're using this language, because I see people using green. Well, they don't really know what they think that they're, a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people use this language incorrect, but I think it's just because this language isn't really known. People don't really understand it. They don't understand natural law. They just know that, you can kind of make stuff up and people will believe it. But if there's no moral code in it, it's really not revealing much. And you'll know this if you really are studying morality. You'll see 100% that green language is a very necessary tool to seeing that words or names are expressing more than what they are commonly known for, in their definitions. So let's go on to the next slide here. Now, okay, this is really important. And, I want to be very clear. I am, I don't consider myself, this extreme or like a know-it-all or expert on this language, because this language, it's a very personal language. It is something that's to help you on your unique spiritual journey. And, obviously, when you're sharing this type of information, you want to be as clear as possible to really convey the message. But, the way that because I made these slides, and, I know that some things can, might not come across in a way that's as clear as I would want it to be. But we have to understand these languages are they're very unknown. They're very, most people do not know them, and very few understand them. So I want to go ahead and read this. Green language is also known as a phonetic principle, and that's something I've already talked about. When in a balanced frequency, this language allows one to see and hear phonetically, acronymically, allegorically, symbolically, anagrammatically, the arrangement of letters in as a different word, like if a word, if you rearrange the letters, it can say something else. That's a form of green language. Etymology is definitely a part of green language, because it's about understanding the history of the word. It's about understanding its inception. And of course, what I've just demonstrated, well, I'll demonstrate it more as we go, but morally, I think morally is the most important aspect of green language. So green is the middle frequency of the visible spectrum. And, this visible spectrum, when you look at all the color frequency, you will see that green is pretty much right in the middle. And this is very key to understanding why, when we think about the chakra system, what all the colors of the chakra are different. They are correspondences of frequencies. And I know you already know that, and probably most listeners do. But the point is, we have to remember those color frequencies and the colors, and see how they measure up with this language. So, this is, it says, and just remember, this is from my show 55. So there's going to be some stuff in here that people aren't going to really understand. But in esoteric Freemasonry, not lodge Freemasonry, esoteric Freemasonry, this tradition, this art, this science, the second degree, okay, is the middle degree, which symbolizes the heart. This whole degree is about the heart, okay? It's a midpoint. So when both hemispheres of the brain are aligned, then true intelligence begins to reveal a sovereign approach into how to look into things much deeper, and see and listen and research with a moral and holistic ear. So, when both hemispheres are worked on, being the sacred feminine right brain and the sacred masculine left brain, when they are equally worked on, they start to begin this harmonization, this sacred wedding or sacred marriage. And marriage is very interesting when you break it down. It actually, in the etymology, it actually means to rebel against government for a lifetime. That's very interesting, marriage. And there's a reason for that, because, when you're bridging your hemispheres, you're becoming balanced. And the government, these exterior government dominators of this world, they can't really do much with people who are balanced in their
Right.
mind.
Everything that they do is to create a state of imbalance and push people into left and right brained dialectics, because that's how they can manipulate people.
Right. And exactly. And so this, as our hemispheres come together, they generate this intelligence. They generate, because it's about the generative of the right brain, the creative aspect, and then the intellectual aspect of the left brain coming together to create this intelligence, this heart-based intelligence. And you have the intel eye and gents, and the eye is the oculus to be able to see the occult, right? So once we understand how we're able to see the occult world, it's because we're caring enough to work on those hemispheres to be able to see the middle, to see the green frequency in the middle, right? And so that is so key to this language and the language of the birds. And I would say, there's a reason I'm talking about green language before the language of the birds, because, it gets more advanced, and I would say you're probably not going to appreciate or understand the language of the birds until green language has been revealed. And it's about, okay, so for instance, when I'm talking about heart-based intelligence, here's one for you. So the word heart, what's the 3-letter word in the middle of heart?
Ear.
That's right. That's right. And there's a reason for that. And that's because the ear is in the middle. Here, think about this. When you're listening to someone with your ear, right, you are feeling, because it's a vibration, you are feeling what they are saying. It's going to the ear of your heart. And that's how you know you're a good listener, when you're listening with your heart. And that's part of understanding heart-based intelligence. Well, where's the heart? The heart is when you look at the Vedic chakra system, the heart is, this is the Anahata heart chakra, right? It's a green frequency. So when you're listening with your heart, you're listening in green. And it's very, very, it's very powerful. And, it's a little bit more advanced when you see the symbols that are, on the sides of the heart, being the H and the T.
I was going to add to something you said too about the listening through the heart space is, the heart is the seat of the care principle, which is the feminine principle, and feminine is receptive, right? Think about even like the way genitalia work. Like the feminine is what receives the penetration of the masculine. So when it's it's one thing to intellectualize via trying to hear somebody's what they're trying to share with you through language. But if you're not connecting that through the heart space and not only hearing them and intellectualizing it, but truly feeling into what they're saying, that's how you truly connect with a person.
Right. Yeah. And it's even love, like when you look at the solfeggio scale. And I'm probably getting ahead of myself on the slides here. I'm going off the top. But the solfeggio scale is the measurement of the frequency of color and sound. And the 528 hertz is the love frequency, which is green. So when you're listening with your heart, you're listening with a green frequency. And this is something that can be measured. But it becomes difficult because we're dealing with the occult, but it can be measured once you understand these how the frequencies are in line with certain chakras, right? And I'm not going to get into it on this show, but man, when you really study the chakra system, you can tell, when you understand consciousness and the frequencies, how we align to truth, frequencies, as we raise in consciousness, that our own perception and understanding has more of a frequent interaction with the plane of truth, right? So the higher in consciousness we get, or higher in our chakras that we get, the more that our vibration starts to, we have a higher vibration. We can
Activate.
right, we activate, and we can see, and we can hear, and we can, we become more sensitized, and we feel, right? Mm-hmm. You can feel with your heart. So this leads me to, and I'm kind of all over the place, but let me with these slides anyway. This is something very simple. Green language is used with the power of perception to be able to see further into advanced expressions of literature and phonetics. And that's just a very simple way to put green language. Let's see here. What's this? Oh, we already just talked about that. We just talked about that one. Oh, so green is, it literally is the definition, the color of living, growing plants. And so, when you think of,
that's what we associate psychologically when we see the color green, even if you're not consciously doing it, that's just what the mind thinks of, is like lush, fields and forests and plants and food and things like that. It's all of that abundance of nature.
Right. And green is what gives us oxygen.
It means life too, really.
Right,
when something's very green, it's like vibrant, it's full of life, as opposed to brown and dry and dead.
Yeah, it's a loving, nurturing color, right? And because of what it's associated with, nature, the living nature. And also the living nature of green is the best foods that we can take into ourselves, the healthiest foods, right? And, so eating more of a green diet can actually help us, get to this more green frequency. Because, and again, just look at, just this is a side note, but just look at the McDonald's or Wendy's or these restaurants that have yellows and reds. They're talking directly to your lower frequencies, your abdomen and your root chakras, because of the red and the yellows, right? And then everything in between. And so what that's doing is it's telling you to eat those awful foods very quickly too. But we feed ourselves these awful foods that keep us in a low frequency. And I think
what did I just say about green being life-giving and this and that? You're not going to find a lot of green in these restaurants, but what you will find is the brown. Everything you get is just this dull brown and yellow, dirt. It's not life-giving food, that's for sure.
Right, exactly.
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I just want to take a quick moment to offer you a special gift. It's the free initiation package download. This is a free download package that includes the Toolbox mini course. I created this package to equip you with all of the essential tools you need for any type of energetic or magical practice for anyone serious about their spiritual development. It's comprised of 3 parts: the circle, the breath, and the voice, where you'll learn how to cast the circle of the Magi, various breathwork techniques, including a powerful guided breathwork meditation, rune galler, and more. You'll also get access to the Inner Sanctum, our private Facebook group and Discord server, as well as some Wizard Factory wallpapers for desktop and mobile, all for free. And for those who've already seen this course, I'm happy to announce that this is a brand new remake with better production and even more information. You can find the link to get yours in the description below. So check it out and let's get back to the content.
Okay, so green language is a language of openness, because it's about what you said with the sacred feminine. It is a language of openness, being open to interpretation. That doesn't mean, just get rid of the grammar. But it's about pattern recognition, true pattern recognition, seeing where the patterns really are leading to and seeing how they make sense or how they don't make sense.
I want to add an idea here, because as a musician, and you've mentioned music in this already, but when you were first describing this idea of like, you have to first learn the rules and follow the rules, and then you have to kind of branch out and just leave that behind. Well, music is exactly, I mean, I've said this for a long time, of like, you have to learn the rules before you can break the rules.
That's
you gotta
right.
learn those foundational principles, because it's, you can't just arbitrarily break the rules. You got to know how to do it in a way that doesn't compromise the essence of it, to where it's just nonsense, right? As an artist, you can do this as well. Like, if you go too abstract with it, it's just going to look like nonsense. Like, you're going to see it and you're like, that's just noise on a canvas. You have to have enough of that left brain structure to it to keep it intact. But then within that, there is a play, right? It's not word work, it's word play, right? It's an art.
That's right.
And
well said.
It becomes abstract.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, this goes back to what I was talking about being a caricature artist. I had to learn the structure of the face before I could exaggerate it and make it funny,
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah, and so it applies across all scales in that way, because
when you're depicting the system, it exaggerates itself. You don't even have to do anything.
Right, exactly. So being able to entertain, etymologically research, and phonetically test words or ideas that may expose that which is beyond the threshold of what is commonly known. So we've already kind of covered all that. Its use is about observing a word and the phonetic sounds associated with that word, the characteristics and the definitions associated with the word, in order to help come to a deeper and more thorough understanding and meaning. So yeah, we've kind of covered that, but it's so important that we don't. If we're serious about finding truth, we're not going to play with this language. It's okay to play with it, play with it all you want, but again, have the foundations first. And I get it why, a lot of people do play with it, with this language, is because they just don't understand it. They're not conscious of it. So what is this language associate, or what is it synonymous with? And I think this is very helpful. So it's synonymous with, or the similar to Adamic language, Enochian language, angelic. Angelic is kind of like understanding the messengers, the angels or messengers of the sky that bring knowledge to the terrestrial from the celestial, right? And then it's a magical language. It's an emerald language. I know Brandon likes to, he likes to call it the emerald language, and I really like that. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Man, his presentation last year on this topic was so great. If anybody hasn't got a chance to check that out, and it's just called Green Language. But the language of calibration, divine language, mystical language of the gods, spoken Kabbalah, the tree of Kabbalah, that's so key to this language, because if you're working with the tradition of Kabbalah, then, you're using, to understand that tradition more. Green language is definitely highly associated with that tradition. And it's not something I'm totally versed in, but it is something I'm working on, and I think it's very, very powerful. The language of light, the art of light, which is probably one of my favorite. just because it's like, yeah, once you understand that this is all about getting to that higher frequency, the higher frequency of light, so it is an art form.
The Promethean
And
flame.
right, exactly. And so it's, as I said, phonetic law, and then the language of the birds. And before we get into the language of the birds, I wanted to mention there's this really there's a word. So I've already described that this language, this green language, is it's more understood when we understand morality. Okay, so I want you guys to think of the. I'm assuming most people listening have either been to SeaWorld or have heard of SeaWorld. So basically, the main event of SeaWorld is this orca, this killer whale that's doing all these tricks in this little, bathtub. And the name of the orca, the main orca, or the name that the mascot overarching name that they give to these killer whales is Shamu. And Shamu has two moral codes, green language revealings in it. One is, it is because, anybody who has really looked into, SeaWorld knows it's a big sham, right? So it is to sham you, right? And so this beautiful aquatic, their mascot is being used to sham people. And so it's, the word is spelled SHAMU, to sham you. But then if you keep feeding into it and supporting this main event, or, this company, this business, shame on you. So it's telling you two things. It's saying you're being shamed, but also if you keep supporting it, shame on you. Because it's wrong. It's not right what they do to these animals. So that's, I think, as far as a name, and I can get into a lot of names, especially political names, but, they reveal something. And we can, get into that if you want, but, I wanted to make mention of that before I get into the language of the birds. So the language of the birds, I put this image together because it's important. And, this is something that I kind of, maybe I subconsciously came up with this or what, but I know now 100%, and even in the show, I was kind of, just saying that, this is my contention, or my, this is an observation that, this is what how we're supposed to think about this language of the birds. And I'm going to get into a few things before I really get into the guts of the language of the birds. But it's important to recognize the statues in ancient Egypt, especially with the bearded men who were considered the learned men, and they had these beards. And it's not just my contention anymore. It's actually, there are other researchers who have verified that the beard is the bird tail. And, so anytime you see a beard in this shape that you see here, especially with, the hawk, then you understand that this is a bird language. Okay. So I want you to understand that bird language, or the language of the birds, is a symbolic language, not just a language of, green, but is a symbolic language. So you have to really pay attention to that. So I think it's more advanced in that way. Now, let's see here, because this is about becoming bird. Huh?
Talking about the language of the beards. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. No,
Beard
you're
language.
that's exactly, yeah, that's the green language, the language of the beards. That's right. Because
Wow.
remember, the beard, even, this is something Doug actually gets into, at the age of 30 with a beard, is a sign of, or symbolic of, enlightenment, right? Because, that's, the age when we start to, wake up and, become enlightened. But a beard, there's like a wisdom, there's wisdom in a beard, right? Because wisdom is about understanding the higher frequency bird-headed mind. And I'm going to get into that as I move through, but that's cool that you caught that. And it's also not just beard, it's bear too. But,
Beard. Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, there's a lot more to that. Now, oh, well, before I get into this, let's think about birds for a second. Let's think about like their uh, like what is basic about birds? Well, basically, all birds have what? They have beaks, they have feathers. That's very important, and they have they're warm-blooded, which I didn't really quite I just don't understand how they're warm-blooded. I have all these geese out in the river all the time when it's ice, and I'm like, how is this even possible that they can withstand this? But I've never truly looked into that, so I don't know. Um, but these are some similarities, and all birds have four limbs, and two of those limbs are wings. Now the attributes are important too to pay attention to, because some birds can fly really high and fast. Some birds can barely leave the ground, or some birds can't fly at all, like an ostrich. And some birds eat are carnivorous. Some birds are eat just bugs and plants and seeds. So it's important to recognize these attributes. And one of the things that is so beautiful about birds, one of the things we have to keep in mind is that birds are on the heads are on the top of the totem poles. Typically, like anytime you see animals on a totem pole, typically a bird is at the top, and there's
Right.
typically like 7 animals or 3, but typically at the bottom there's a reptile, typically an alligator, and then in between is kind of like the other types of furry mammals. But that all is part of understanding the triune brain. So the R complex being the lower, and then the mammal brain, the reptilian, yeah. The reptile brain being the older part of the brain, and then the mammal brain being in the middle, and then the newer part, the neocortex part, being the bird head. But it's also, you have 2 hemispheres, which is akin to 2 wings. And that's so important to understand, because when you ignite your neocortex, you are igniting your wings to fly. Birds are so they're so magical, especially birds that can fly. But we want to be, most humans want to be as free as a bird, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's so interesting, because when we think about, like, for instance, when it comes to us humans, we typically start out in materiality, right? We have our life of materiality, which is, well, and then, then we go on our spiritual journey, which is spirituality, right? So materiality is it's about understanding the law of gravitation, right? And then spirituality is about the law of levitation, right? So as we levitate, it's the same as a bird defying gravitation. Birds levitate. That's why they're known as spirits. They're flying spirits in a lot of cultures.
And I've used this allegory of flight to depict natural law. I've never read this or anything. It just kind of came to me intuitively. But what's interesting about flight, it's like there is kind of a hierarchy to natural law as well. So the fact that a bird can fly doesn't mean that suddenly gravity stopped existing.
Right.
Gravity is still a force that is in effect. The thing that happens is the bird is utilizing higher laws that allow them to circumnavigate the lower laws like that.
That's right. And that's exactly how we can, that's why we use birds to, as a correspondence in consciousness, to be able to levitate in our mind and expand and go on our spiritual journey all the way through the universe. Now, let's see where we're at on the slides here. Okay. Oh, this is so key. Now, when we think of the feather symbolism, what is distilled into this symbol? Well, it would be, lightness, right? Birds are light, right? Well, feathers are light. Birds are, because we have to understand these are all attributes of birds, mobility, right? Especially that's something so profound, or not profound, but like so amazing about a bird. They can, they can walk, they can go swimming. Well, most of them can swim. And then, a lot of them can fly. So there's a lot of really cool things that birds can do. And, they talk too. They have really interesting, languages amongst each other.
This is what's so interesting about the symbolism here, is that you're talking about one symbol that is a bird. And
right.
And the brain associates all these attributes, all of these characteristics with this one symbol. Even if you're not even aware of it, it's there.
Exactly.
At a subconscious level.
Right. Yeah, exactly. We all know this, So there's air is associated, wings, balance. Birds are masters of balance, flight, joy, and I think the most important is freedom associated with us, right? Mm-hmm. To be as free as a bird. And, this is so key to understand. And, you see this Native American here on the left. There is a lot of similarities with the Native Americans and the ancient Egyptians, with the way that they, they venerated and their ways of seeing and understanding the spiritual world. And, just look at the headdress, look at the feather, the tomahawk, there's even green language in the tomahawk, ta-ma-hawk. And ta is the sacred father, ma is the sacred mother, and then the hawk is the sacred son, being, Horus the hawk.
Yeah, I was going to mention that sun symbolism because just to throw this in here, you mentioned air as one of the associative there, and air represents the intellect as the element. And that's that neocortex that has higher, consciousness, reason, logic, things like that. And as you said, this bird symbolism has also been associated with the sun. Even within the Cometian, you see the sun disk is the sun in the middle with the two wings coming off the side. That's representing the coalescence of the two hemispheres coming together to activate that sun right here in the middle.
Absolutely, man. You nailed it. That's exactly 100% true. Now, this is an image that I actually created for Mark Passio's Science of Natural Law.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you. And I think it was kind of used. I don't know, but anyway, the point is that this is so key to understanding green language and how it is similar, how it ties in with the language of the birds. Okay, so for instance, the goddess Ma'at, you saw in the last image, she has a feather. It's actually an ostrich feather, which is very interesting. but she is also winged. She has 2 wings. So she is she has bird attributes. She doesn't look like a bird in the face, and that's important to pay close attention to. But she is the one who weighs the heart against the feather, for, those who are, judged to, in order to enter into the rebirth or the afterlife. And so this is so key to pay attention to, because this goes back to what I was saying about levitation. So if your heart levitates to the weight of the feather, then your heart is light, and light is interchangeable.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that means that you have filled your heart with light, and you are, you have to understand them both in the same way, because they're the scales. It has this double meaning, this double meaning of weight, but double, the weight in the amount of light that you have gained. How
the knowledge of morality and natural law,
exactly,
if applied through action, is going to create a heart unencumbered by guilt.
Right, 100%. And so, how green language comes into this? Well, what are the scales doing? The scales are balancing. So this is about balancing the hemispheres. It's the one symbol that ties both of these together, and it's a symbol that is very ancient, and I've talked about it on other shows, is the symbol of the circled dot, the point within a circle. And because it's about,
like the target symbol.
What?
Like the target.
Yeah, exactly. The target. That's right. Yeah, the targeting you, the target, the targets. The place where everybody goes and shops, being targeted by the Most High, because that's what it is. It's about getting. It's about it's a claim to the Most High when you're using that symbol for, whatever purpose, whether it be good or bad.
It's a sun symbol, isn't it?
That's right. It is. It's
incidentally, with their branding, they put that symbol right on the eye of the dog.
That's right. Exactly. Very, very astute. And because remember, well, there's a lot to that because kind of goes back to the Jekyll in ancient Egypt. But there's. Yeah, Anubis, but it's about understanding how this all goes back, and it's a claim to the Most High. But that symbol, it goes back a lot further than solar. It goes back into the stellar mythos. But we have to understand it in the solar phase. But that's a whole nother conversation. But that's a big can of worms, man. But so the point is to see how these the language of the birds is akin to green language because it's about light. And I'm going to get further into that as I progress here. Bird-headed deities in ancient Egypt and ancient Egyptian art symbolize the spiritual side of human nature. And this is something I already got into with the totem pole. And totem pole, man, that's such a powerful archetype to understand.
And you also see this symbolism of a bird fighting with a serpent in many, many cultures throughout history. Like, just look at the Mexican flag, for example. There's a perfect depiction of that. Quetzalcoatl, I believe. There's dozens of them.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up Quetzalcoatl. I can never say that name right.
Yeah,
but
close enough.
But that idea behind that is very interesting because I actually gave I did a show where I talked about Darwin, the Darwin's evolution theory as an allegory. And one of the things I talked about, because I don't buy into idea that we, evolved from apes in the same, I just don't see the connection necessarily. And I'm not saying I'm right or anything. I just, and I'm not putting Darwin's work down the trash. But what I am saying is that it's important to look at his theory as an allegory. And one of the things that a lot of people believe is that dinosaurs or, ancient reptiles slowly morphed into birds. And I find that really interesting, because I'm not negating that. I don't really buy into it completely. And that's just because I don't really fully understand it. But what I do understand is there's truth to the allegory, because it's about going from the reptile consciousness into bird-headed consciousness. So there is something to that.
There's something to it, and there's no mistaking the similarities. Like if you take all the feathers off of a bird and you just look at especially their face, their eyes, they're extremely similar, like very lizard-like.
Right. Yeah, there is something. It's
hard to deny.
Right. It's very weird because, there are still some things that I'm not sold on yet, but I think that the allegory to me matters. And I'm not saying that the study of the evolution in animals. I'm not saying that there's nothing to that. I'm definitely not saying that. But what I am saying is that if we look at it allegorically, there's something even more beautiful that comes out of it. There's more of an unveiling to that, that allegory is pretty interesting, but I'll save that for later. But I just want to read this. So, we already talked about birds and their feathers are light and weight. Light and weight is interchangeable or akin to light being the visible light or raised consciousness. This is analogous to Horus, the bird-headed nature god, who is associated with the sun, which flies, apparently flies across our sky from east to west every day from the perspective of Earth. This is why the ancient Egyptians had a sun disk in the middle of two wings, which is what you were talking about earlier. It's the same thing. And yeah, that's the symbol's actually up there. I forgot it was up there. With the two serpents, that's.
Oh yeah. Didn't even catch that. That's great.
Yeah. And so this is also why green language, or the language of the birds, is also referred to as the language of light or the art of light, as it is in a language of higher frequency and evolution of man. So, getting into these archetypes of ancient Egypt is so key to understanding green language and the language of the birds. And so once we, start to learn these gods, these nature gods, this is what's really going to help us understand ourselves and understand, the zodiac or the zodiac, right? And, I can kind of skip this, but this is important though, because we're talking about nature gods. This is, some people look at this as a flagpole. I look at it, or some people look at it as an axe. I look at it as both. And I'm going to explain why. So, and this is very important because this symbol is about understanding natural law. So the etymological root of the word natural is the English word nature, which is the etymology derived from the Egyptian word necher, NTR, meaning God, right? Symbolized hieroglyphically as a symbol stylized as single axe or flag on a pole, representing a power or force in nature. So that's, all these archetypes are forces in nature that, we can get to know and how it corresponds in our consciousness. These nature gods. And so what I wanted to say about an axe, and this is very interesting because when you think about the principles of enlightenment, being self-defense and non-aggression. We can look at the axe as the self-defense principle, right? And then as the non-aggression principle, we can look at it as flagpole, because the flag is submissive to wind, to nature's.
The white flag is symbolizing peace and truce.
Right. Yeah. And
interesting.
Yeah, and so looking at it symbolically as both, I think that really helps us understand the symbol more, especially because there's debate whether it's axe or flag, but I would say look at it as both. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. I also wanted to quickly comment, can you go back one slide?
Sure.
Looking at that sun disk symbol at the top as well, especially the fact that the apple, or sorry, I just said it, the circle is red. It looks like an apple. So you have a serpent and an apple, or where have we seen this symbol before?
Yeah, wow, I didn't even think of that, man. That's true.
Which it's in that story symbolized knowledge, true knowledge of self, the occult, I would even say. And it also kind of makes me think of the cosmic egg, which is often depicted encircled by a serpent.
Wow, yeah, man. And then that just made me think of have you ever seen that movie? And I'm sure you have. It's one of the greatest King Arthur movies ever made, in my opinion, which is the Arthurian Legend.
No, never have.
What? Oh man, you'll love that movie. It's so good. It was so well done. One of the scenes in the movie, and this really isn't spoiling much because it's kind of like a hidden. It's something you're not going to know what you're looking at unless you understand what you're talking about right now, which is where this big bird, I think it's either a hawk or an eagle, grabs this giant snake and flies up in the air with it while there is an erected pillar. And that is very, very, and it's a very quick scene, but, because King Arthur is about, pulling that sword from the stone and taking, the responsibility of truth, right? So it's about raising that consciousness. And when you look at that image that you're looking at right there with the two snakes, this is about understanding the Kundalini snakes, of raising that red power up to the wings, because it's about the snakes represent reptile, and then the wings represent the higher order thinking.
You're uniting those two. You're bringing, starting from the root chakra, which is a red circle, and bringing that all the way up to the top of the wings. That's cool, dude. Yeah, man. And I actually just thought about that when you talked about the apple. I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what it is.
So, man, that's awesome. Now I'm thinking about that. That is so crucial. And see, that's how you think symbolically, because once you understand these sciences and understand these frequencies and how symbols collapse, like the circled dot, it is a two-dimensional image, but it can also be a three-dimensional cone. So we have to, that's how you think. You say that, because I was just thinking about this, is you could imagine what you're seeing is you're looking from the bottom up through the entire chakra system, and you're seeing the bottom is the red all the way to the wings being the top. Yes, exactly. That's the way the thinking has to be. Man. That's awesome, man. So, okay, so this is where green language and the language of the birds is starting to merge. And this is so interesting, this kind of stuff. The ancient Egyptian nature god Osiris is an archetype of the circles of life, dealing with death and resurrection, dealing, with the zodiac, right? He represents nature on earth from its low, cold, death-like state to its rising light and rejuvenation state. Simultaneously, he represents the symbolic underworld of a human spiritual journey into and through the dark, that has to be gone through, where moral behavior is judged by, Ma'at, in order to have a chance to be passed into light and resurrection or raised consciousness. And this is dealing with this whole idea of, these mystery traditions, these esoteric systems that are helping us understand this rebirth of, where the material self, weighs us down and dies, but then we levitate and reborn with spirit, right? And so that's what he represents, and I'm gonna show that with a few images, and also keep in mind that he's green. So because and he's been depicted, black or green, and that's very important to pay close attention to. So because Osiris represents renewal or regeneration, his body color is green, and he rises to become the nature god Ra in the summer solstice. So he raises, and I'm gonna show this on the next slide how this works. So the Egyptian etymology for Osiris is Asar or Asra, and that's very, very important to pay very close attention to, because Os means the power of, or the root of. So Osiris means the power of Ra, meaning rebirth of Ra, which represents Most High in the solar mythos, especially the solar mythos. And, I'm not, 100% sure if he was in the stellar mythos, but it's important to pay close attention to Osiris in the solar mythos, the sun worship era, which is what we're currently in. So the principle that makes life come from darkness and apparent death is and was called Asar, or Osiris, which symbolizes the power of renewal. So Asra represents the process, growth, and the underlying cyclical aspects of the universe, including Earth. Now, this is a graph that I made to help us understand these archetypes and how they go together, because you have to think of, now, one thing to really pay close attention to is these solar nature gods on the left, the right, and the upper are all bird-headed, associated with Osiris. Now, Set is interesting because Set is also associated with black birds, so we have to keep that in mind. And there's a reason he has these two pillars on the top of his head, because a lot of people associate Set as the devil figure. Now, when we're looking at this solar mythos cycle of Osiris, the cult of Osiris, this is so key. And I'm going to try to keep this as simple as possible, because I know this is a lot of information, but think of the fact that Osiris is dark. When you're looking at his body, down at the bottom, he is dark. He's in a dark color, and this represents death in the underworld, right? In the winter solstice, right? So it's about understanding that, this is about to become a rebirth. And I'm going to go around in the whole cycle to really demonstrate what this means. So, okay, so this, a lot of people don't understand the zodiac in this position because, and that's very important. That's one thing I forgot to mention in my show, but it's important to put the zodiac in a position like the clock, because they go together, right? So, going clockwise, everything is going clockwise here. So, think of Osiris as the sun, okay, and all these different seasons. Let's just understand that, when you're, going on your spiritual journey, you're going down into the underworld. You're falling into the underworld to do the shadow work. And Set deposes Osiris at this point in the autumn equinox. He deposes him. He cuts him up into what's known as the 14 pieces and scattered throughout the earth, right? And so this is part of the eschatology, the final things, right? This is where the sun is going to its lowest point, which is the winter solstice, the death of the, just like the death of Jesus, right? And so then there is now 3 months go by, or three houses go by, being the 3 days in between, death and resurrection. And then, so Isis puts Osiris back together. So Isis represents care, but also Isis is pregnant with Horus. So Isis has a full moon. And this is like, the first week after the spring equinox, the first full moon, right before that Sunday, there is that full, following the full moon is, this is the resurrection or rebirth of Jesus, but also the rebirth of Horus. But this is about Osiris coming back to life, right?
Okay, I have to share. This is the perfect opportunity for that. And I don't know if you've heard this or if you've ever considered this, but if not, I think you'll really like it. It just struck me. And you just mentioned Isis is the one that brings him back. So he raises from the dead, right? He raises from the dead. Raises is raw Isis.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. See, it's right there in the word. Wow.
So cool. I'm actually really happy you've never heard that before.
Yeah,
I just thought of
man.
that as you were talking.
You nailed it. That is awesome. That really, see, and it solidifies it, right? Because Isis is the one to the care to bring back the pieces, to put the pieces together to be able to be reborn. Because it's about rememberment. We as wow. our souls have been dismembered
and remembered.
That's right. Awesome. And so and it's also interesting because Osiris, one of the pieces that is left behind is his phallus, right? And it's a member, right?
I hate when that happens.
So it's interesting. I mean, so there's this, there's green language all over this. So Horus, the young Horus, is resurrected, or birthed, right, from the full moon. The sun is this. Think of Isis as having instead of a belly, picture a full moon. And inside that full moon is the sun. That's what that is. So once that full moon has birthed the sun is resurrected out of the tomb or the womb, right? So then raised, and you can, there's a lot more to this, but Osiris becomes As-Ra, the raised most high, Ra, the sun god Ra. And this is about fully raised. This is about growth. Right. That's and right.
Shining the rays of the sun as
right.
well.
Yeah. That's right.
Also another, again, just we're on a roll here with these, but Horus rising, he rises from the Horus rising, from the horizon.
Right.
And then he sets on the flip side, sets.
Right. Sunset.
To go back into the underworld.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And so it's an interesting science because we have to keep Osiris as like almost like Osiris is this spirit, because he's a nature god, but he is the spirit of the whole zodiac, right? And even in the word Osiris is Os-Iris, and which that's the when you understand the symbol of the circle dot, you're looking at the circle dot with this zodiac, And what's right in the middle? The sun, which is where all the houses are supporting the sun in the middle, right? And so this is about understanding, also, what most people know, the son on the cross, Jesus on the cross, right? So, but yes, sunset.
I wonder if Iris comes is any related to Osiris as well, because the eye is also the eye of Ra. It's another sun symbol. It's the son of God, the eye of God.
Yeah, the Most High, and that's the thing. Like with the circle dot, actually in its inception, from what I understand, is the eye of God, the eye on the mount. And so that's what we're looking at. Because Osiris represents, the all-encompassing figure.
That's why when you refer to yourself as I am my soul. I am solar. I.
Right. Yes. Yeah, man. You're right on. That's exactly it. And it's like, when you understand these aspects of raising and going into the dark and going into the death, this is all about the journey of consciousness, being starting out in ignorance and raising. We're starting out in darkness and raising out of that material-based world and all these man-made ideologies and man-made constructs and systems, and the belief in authority, and this is about raising out of slavery, right? Raising out of the darkness. That's why I made the lower path dark, because it's about understanding night and day. Now, that does not mean that night equals evil. I want to be very clear on that. Darkness does not equal evil. It's a symbol that can represent that to help us understand ourselves.
Yeah, I would say there's two frames you can use for that. Darkness in the context of ignorance and therefore immorality. That could be signifying evil if you're going that route.
Right.
But also, looking at like even having a black and white perspective is literally like depicting light and dark, and there's only those. And that is a symptom, I think, of the Abrahamic mindset versus a pagan mindset sees nature as a holistic system. And there's nothing evil about the nighttime. It serves as, and there's the challenge with that. When you go through the dark night of the soul, that's not evil. It's serving you. That's that Saturn pressure that's, forcing you to rise and overcome and become more of a spiritual warrior. Those are all good things that are aspects of this journey.
Right. Yeah. We rise from Saturn to the sun, to the light. Right. I really appreciate your views, or your understanding of paganism, and it's something I'm not entirely versed on, and also animism. Man, I really hope that we can do a show together on the Cubbyhole someday about both of those.
Yeah, let's do it, man.
So. This is such a important science to understand with the zodiac. Now, obviously, there's a lot more to this zodiac. There's, when you think about the zodiac, and astronomy and astrology, those are very important. But when it comes to astrotheology, this is what's going to help us understand these archetypes better, and this is what's going to help us understand. Think about this. When Osiris raises in the spring, that's the same time that green, becomes lush, right?
Yeah.
So it's green language. Osiris is a green language, and then it's it's about the bird levitating. Green is levitating because it's coming up. The leaves are blooming out. The grass is growing up. So green is growing. It's a growing. That's why green, the definition is a growing plant, right?
Right.
So it's about, and where are they raising to? Where are the plants raising to? They're raising to the light, like we are, you
Yes.
know? And so it's just, it's all there, it's just, that is the science, and that's the beauty. And that's something that, if we can recognize in ourselves and see that, consciously, man, that can really help us understand how connected we really are to this science.
Yeah, I love these symbolism. The mythos is so powerful. I mean, we've spent however many minutes on this one slide, and there's just so mountains of wisdom that you can just continue to extrapolate. And we're sitting here riffing on different words and
Yeah, man.
hidden symbols, and I just love it. And that's the beauty of this. It is like so playful and exciting, right? This doesn't have to be so heavy and academic and just like, rigid. Like, it's a joy to be able to look at these very simple yet infinitely deep and profound uh, allegories and things. So yeah,
Right.
thanks for getting into this.
So in many cultures, they talk about, or ancient cultures, especially in ancient Egypt, and even cultures up until the present day, they have this belief that birds are spirits, and this is something that I kind of talked about earlier. But and this goes back to the very first thing I was talking about with symbolism and phonetic vibration, is that when we think of the bird as the word, right? That is so important because these cultures believed birds as spirits, and if spirits are birds, then spirits are words, right? And so because this all goes with word spelling. We're spelling vibrations constantly through symbols being letters and words. But like when you think of the word spirit, and you break the word spirit broken down, well, there's a few different definitions, but spirare, right? Spirare means breath, right?
Mhm.
Breath.
Respiratory.
Yeah, right. Breath. So when we're speaking, because with the breath of life, right? Where we are inhaling the whole universe and we're exhaling the whole universe all the time, right? So it's a figure eight. The whole universe is going into that little top part of the eight is going into your lungs, right? But it's all connected. That's the infinite symbol, right?
That's what animus means too, as well. To be animated, or animism. It means life force energy, but it also means breath.
I didn't know that. Yeah, and so that verifies some of this, because here's the thing: when you speak, you are speaking the word, the spirit, breath. You are speaking, and that is a vibration of invisible forces flying to the ears and heart of those who are on the receiving end of what you're saying, right? So it is an occult. This is an occult force. This is because, remember, the only way that we can really truly understand the language of the birds is being spiritual, and understand that it is the spirit, right? So this brings us closer to understanding that. It brings us closer to source, but that is so key, because it's when you're speaking a direct spirit breath to others, hearts and minds. And that goes with the science that I was sharing, because it is about, if we don't have the words or the communication, we're not going to understand any of these sciences. We're not going to understand each other,
Yep.
So it's a higher frequency conversation, that we're having.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's it, man. I mean, there's a lot more, but I really appreciate you allowing me to demonstrate all that, and it's really cool that you were able to break down as much as you did, and it's just so awesome to have that experience with someone always, because that means we're growing together. We're truly having a real conversation.
Yeah, yeah. I was hoping that this is exactly what would happen. That because this is a passion of mine as well. Like I said, once I really got into the work of Jordan Maxwell, and it just completely opened my mind up, and I couldn't like stop looking at every little angle. I think I do have a bit of a knack for catching those little details and looking at things symbolically and drawing parallels between this word and that, or this symbol and that, or whatever. I'm passionate about it. It's very enjoyable for me.
That's awesome, man. I love hearing that. I mean, because that means that you have elevated to a place in yourself that, and I look at that as a form of appreciation, because you took it upon yourself to, go much further, and I don't see any signs of you giving up, and that's what it's about. It's about constantly evolving, and that's what we're not wanted to do. And this information, I understand it's hard for people. It was hard for me too. And, but it's very, unveiling. It's very, for me, it gave me a very deep connection to nature that I never knew existed.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I definitely think that adopting this mindset as an essential component of being a spiritual being is learning to see things through the lens of allegory and symbolism. I mean, it's good to have a literal perspective as well and take things at face value. It's kind of like balancing the masculine and feminine. You're seeing the trees and the forest simultaneously. They don't have to be one or the other or cancel each other out. And the more you're able to have two perspectives simultaneously, I mean, first of all, that's so rare these days. People are so just like one track minded. It's just, this is how I see it. I'm attached to that. It's
Right.
reactive and little room for discourse within that, but actually holding two different ideas in your mind at the same time. I think that's a mark of true intelligence, being
Absolutely,
able
it
to
is.
oscillate and kind of see the connections there.
I completely agree.
Nate, this has been an absolutely exciting and a very informative conversation. I'm so glad that you came on and shared all this wisdom and information with us. You're welcome back onto the channel anytime, brother, and I'll definitely be taking you up on that offer to come onto your show and speak about potentially animism or whatever you like.
I
Why don't
appreciate
you,
that, man.
yeah, absolutely. So why don't you tell the viewers, where you'd like them to check out your stuff, and maybe what are you working on currently?
Well, you can go to my website, cubbyhole.com, where you can find my first podcast being the Cubbyhole, the one that I do with Brandon and Douglas Martin. And then I also have my other podcast, which is Outcasting, which is bits of science towards freedom. It's basically just a smaller way of whetting people's appetite to want to go into the cubbyhole. But I share a lot more on there that I haven't shared on the cubbyhole yet. So it's not just a rehash or anything like that, but they're both I made them into a stepwise progression, a tapestry, because that seems to work best for me. And I definitely recommend that to not go skip around. But I've skipped around before. But as long as you go back and you learn the steps prior, I think that it's very helpful. But the what I'm working on now is I'm working on 2 presentations. I cannot necessarily give away the names yet, because I'm not so sure I'm set on the names. But I'm really, really excited to do the conference. I think you're doing both the conferences of the Trivium and the Metamorphosis, right?
Yeah, I'm on
So
funnel 3 and seed 5.
yeah, so am I, and I'm really, really excited about those. I have some really interesting works in the works, and I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm just continuing to enhance my technical skills. That's something that I've been really trying so hard to work on, to get this work out there in the most like you, in the most sexy way possible. Because I really care about this work, and I really think it has brought me so much clarity. So the spiritual journey is a refinement of the self, and so I'm just that's what I plan on doing, and helping people come to a better understanding of how to levitate and get out of this this awful slavery that we all find ourselves in. So
Right on, man. Yeah, I mean, definitely the best way to learn is to teach. I've always said that. And thank you for all the work that you do in service to truth and consciousness and spirituality. Really respect what you're doing, man, and can't wait to see what other work you put out. I'm
same,
sure
brother.
great. Yeah, thank
Same.
you. Thank you for joining me, Nate. I hope everyone watching enjoyed this segment. I know it ran a little bit longer than usual, but I really think that we covered a lot of great material here. Take your time with it, digest it. And if you did get some value from that, please consider hitting the like button down below. It only takes 1 second, and it's really the best thing you could do to help spread the message, help this channel grow, help push back against the algorithms constantly suppressing. And if you do decide to join the tribe, subscribe below. Make sure you hit the bell so you get it notified, because instead of just leaving it up to the algorithm to feed you this type of content, that's a bit of a gamble there. And definitely they are pushing down this type of material. So thank you for watching. I hope you did enjoy. We'll see you next time in the next episode. But until then, be empowered, inspired, and encouraged.